I think where we started out was really looking, and it's back to what we do today. So it's still the same sort of like core vision. But the fundamental notion was that if we can understand what people do inside of a video game, if we can observe it, if we have the right models for understanding that, we'd probably be able to replicate it. And if we replicate what people do inside of the game, that must be useful somehow. Right. And so really the notion and what got us going in the beginning was kind of like this notion of having a virtual player that's able to interact with the game in different ways at different levels of intelligence. But rather than thinking of that necessarily as an experience, because there can be an experience in a multiplayer game, or you could play against the AI, and that's interesting. But people also like to play against like humans, right? Against the actual other humans. It's part of a social experience. So if we kind of like that's one thing we do, but if we de-emphasize that a little bit, and then we thought about how could this be of use to the whole games industry as such. That's kind of like where we came into it. And so we kind of like went out with that thesis. And the very first project that we ended up doing was for a game that was like a multiplayer, mobile title that a studio in San Francisco was working on. We were talking to them, and we ended up basically building a bot that would play their game like a human player. And what that meant for them was they were building this multiplayer game, and they were like a small team working on it, as you often are, especially in the early days when you're doing mobile game development. You have a small team, it's fast paced, you're iterating as fast as you can to find a good game experience. So we built these bots for them, and we just saw that it was super enabling because when they were playing the game, they had somebody to play against all of a sudden. They didn't have to organize or coordinate. They could sort of like try out and understand the dynamics of what they were building. They could start having those experiences, and they would start getting a different perspective on the artifact they were building as they were building it. And then we kind of like took it to the next level, which was interesting because the bots were relatively fast. It's a smaller game. So suddenly they were also able to run, simulations. They would pit the AIs against one another and then start using that to generate data about the dynamics of the game. Like how does this play out? How does that play out? All of these like hypothetical scenarios. And I think for us, that first case was kind of like what made us really double down on modl.ai as an idea. Because we could see the impact it was having on that team. And then that led us to thinking, of course, okay, this idea of having simulated behavior can be a really powerful toolkit across a bunch of different use cases in the games industry. So if we can build a piece of software and a pipeline and all the things that go with that is kind of like a toolkit that the game developers can put in there and then build out from, there's going to be a lot of use cases that we start enabling by giving that technology to folks.